The world was quiet at dawn. The air was still damp from the night's dew, and the soil smelled rich and alive. Hidden among the soft blades of grass and the wildflowers that painted the garden in strokes of purple, yellow, and white, a small creature stirred. His name was Hector. Hector was no ordinary snail, or at least that's how he liked to think of himself. He carried a shell the color of old copper, spiraled and strong, with faint marks that looked like the rings of a tree. His body was soft and slow, moving inch by inch with a patience that others often mistook for weakness. But inside his tiny heart was something that most snails didn't carry, a restless dream. For most of the snails in the garden, life was simple. They ate the leaves, hid under stones when the sun grew too hot, and whispered their quiet thoughts under the cover of moonlight. That was enough. But Hector. Hector looked beyond the tall wooden fence that surrounded the garden. To him, the fence wasn't a protection. It was a boundary, a wall that kept him from everything he had yet to see. He often gazed at the fence when the sun was rising, its beams casting golden stripes through the slats. What lies beyond, he would wonder aloud, though no one ever answered. The butterflies laughed when they heard him. "The world is far too big for you, Hector," they would say, their wings flickering like stained glass in the sunlight. "You are slow, fragile, and small. Beyond the fence are dangers you cannot even imagine." The ants were harsher still. "Foolish snail," they would snap as they marched in long, disciplined lines. "The garden provides everything. To leave is wasteful, selfish, and reckless." Even the older snails, those with thicker shells and slower movements, told him stories of cousins who had wandered too far. They never came back, the elders warned, their voices heavy with disapproval. But Hector's heart refused to listen. Each night, as the stars twinkled above the garden, he would dream of rolling meadows, wide rivers, and trees taller than any fence. He dreamed of a sky that stretched so far it could never be contained. Yet he kept those dreams mostly to himself. He knew others wouldn't understand. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the horizon with shades of fire and rose, Hector found himself near the edge of the garden. The fence loomed tall and quiet, its wooden boards weathered by time. He inched closer, pressing his fragile body against the rough surface. For a long time, he stayed there, listening. It was then that he heard it. A sound unlike any he had known, a whisper carried on the wind. It seemed to seep through the cracks of the fence, soft yet clear, like a voice calling to him. "Beyond lies freedom," it seemed to say. "Beyond lies the world." Hector shivered, though not from fear. The whisper filled him with a strange warmth, as if the world itself were inviting him. But when he turned to share this with another snail, he found none willing to listen. His closest friend, Mira, shook her tiny head. "Hector, you must stop this," she said gently, her eyes heavy with worry. "The world beyond is not meant for us. We are snails. Our lives are here, in the safety of the garden. If you go, you will never return." Hector wanted to protest, to tell her that he had to see for himself. But when he looked into Myra's kind eyes, his words faltered. He didn't want to hurt her. He simply nodded and fell silent, but the whisper of the wind stayed with him. The nights grew colder as the season changed. The flowers began to wilt, and the leaves that once provided endless food turned brittle and scarce. Hector noticed how the other snails struggled, how the ants worked harder, how the butterflies flew away to warmer places. The garden, once endless and full, began to feel smaller, emptier. One night, under the pale glow of the moon, Hector climbed a stone at the edge of the garden. From there, he could see the sky more clearly, a canvas of stars stretching forever. The vastness filled him with both fear and wonder. "I can't stay here forever," he whispered to himself. "If I die in this garden without ever knowing what lies beyond, what was the point of carrying these dreams?" The words surprised even him, but they felt true. The next morning, Hector made a decision. He would leave. Not today, not tomorrow, but soon. He would gather what courage a small snail could muster and make his way beyond the fence, into the great unknown. He told no one. Not the butterflies, not the ants, not even Mira. Some dreams were too fragile to share. Instead, he began to prepare in secret. He practiced climbing higher blades of grass, building strength in his body. He learned to navigate quickly across wet soil, to avoid puddles that might trap him. He observed the patterns of birds that circled above, memorizing when it was safest to move. Slowly, Hector transformed from a dreamer into a wanderer, even if his journey hadn't yet begun. One evening, as the sun bled into the horizon, Mira found him again near the fence. "You're thinking of leaving, aren't you?" she whispered. Hector froze. He wanted to deny it, but her gaze was too knowing. I must," he admitted at last, his voice trembling. "I can't explain it, Mira. There's something out there calling me. I feel it in my shell, in my very being. If I stay, I will always wonder what I missed." Mira lowered her eyes. A tear glistened at the edge. "Then promise me something, Hector. Promise me that if you find the world too cruel, you will turn back. Promise me you will not let your dream destroy you." Hector wanted to promise, but deep down he knew he couldn't. Some journeys, once begun, could never be undone. Instead, he touched his shell gently to hers, the way snails did when words were not enough. "I will carry your kindness with me," he said softly. "Wherever I go." That night, Hector did not sleep. He stayed awake, listening to the garden around him, memorizing its sounds, the rustle of the grass, the soft hum of crickets, the distant hoot of an owl. It was the only home he had ever known, and he loved it dearly. But love, he realized, was not always about staying. Sometimes love meant leaving, to honor the call within one's heart. As dawn began to break, Hector turned his gaze once more to the fence. The wood seemed less like a wall and more like a threshold. Beyond it lay uncertainty, danger, and perhaps even death. But beyond it also lay possibility. And Hector, though small and slow, had decided he would find out what that possibility was. With the first rays of sunlight touching his shell, Hector whispered to himself. "This is the beginning." The morning after Hector's decision, the garden felt strangely different. The dew on the leaves sparkled brighter, the earth smelled fresher, and even the distant hum of insects seemed to carry a secret message. Hector wondered if it was only in his mind, or if the world itself had noticed the shift within him. He moved carefully through the tall grass, his copper-colored shell catching the early light. Every blade he passed, every stone he slid across, seemed to whisper to him, urging him forward. But Hector's heart was not without weight. He knew leaving meant more than curiosity, it meant abandoning the life he had known. It meant saying goodbye, not just to Mira, but to the safety of routine, the comfort of familiarity, the predictable rhythm of the garden. Still, the whisper in the wind would not let him rest. That afternoon, Hector climbed onto a smooth pebble near the fence and listened. He was certain now, there was a voice beyond. "Hector," it murmured, almost too soft to hear. "Do not fear. The world is waiting." He shivered. How did the wind know his name? Was he imagining it? Or was something greater calling to him? The thought both frightened and excited him. Perhaps he was not as insignificant as the butterflies believed. Perhaps there was a reason he carried these dreams while others did not. As days passed, Hector began to notice signs others ignored. The ants worked tirelessly, yet he saw how many of them collapsed under the weight of food they carried. The butterflies, as beautiful as they were, had fragile wings that tore in storms. Even the elder snails, who warned him to stay, grew weaker with each day, their shells chipped, their movements slower. Life in the garden was not as safe as everyone claimed. Danger existed here too, only hidden under the illusion of routine. One evening, Hector found Mira resting under a leaf, her shell pale in the moonlight. She looked tired. "Mira," he said softly, "don't you ever wonder what's out there? Beyond the fence. She sighed. I used to, when I was younger. I dreamed of flowers that glowed at night, rivers that sang, trees with golden leaves. But then I watched too many try. Too many who never came back. The world does not welcome us, Hector. We are too small. Her words pierced him, but he answered gently. Maybe we are small. But does that mean we should never try? Does size decide whether a life has meaning? Mira didn't reply. Instead, she closed her eyes, and for a moment, Hector thought he saw sorrow etched into her face, like a secret dream she had buried long ago. The whispers of the wind grew stronger. At night, Hector could hear them clearly. Come, they urged. You were not made for walls. Beyond lies your story. One night, when the moon was high and silver, Hector followed the sound to the very edge of the fence. He pressed his body against the wood and closed his eyes. Suddenly, he saw images, not with his eyes, but within his mind. He saw rolling hills covered in wildflowers, rivers shining like glass under the sun, and forests so vast they seemed endless. He saw stars brighter than any he had ever glimpsed, and a horizon that curved into eternity. He gasped. The vision vanished as quickly as it came, leaving him trembling. Was it real? Or just his imagination? Either way, Hector knew one thing with certainty: he could no longer stay. The next morning, he made preparations. He found the strongest leaf in the garden and curled it beneath his shell for extra protection. He traced the safest path along the fence where the wood had weakened, memorizing every crack and splinter. For days he waited for the right moment, watching the sky for birds, listening for ants that might betray him. His patience was not weakness, it was strategy. At last, the moment arrived. The garden slept under a blanket of mist. The sun had not yet risen, and the world was quiet except for the soft rustle of wind. Hector slid to the fence, his heart pounding in his tiny chest. He paused only once, glancing back. The garden stretched behind him, familiar and beautiful. Here he had been born, here he had dreamed, here he had loved. He thought of Mira, her kind eyes, her quiet strength. A part of him wanted to turn back, to hide under the safety of a leaf forever. But then the wind whispered again. Go. And Hector obeyed. The climb was harder than he expected. The wood was rough, filled with grooves that cut against his fragile body. Each inch felt like a mountain, each breath a battle. But Hector pushed forward, his shell scraping against the surface, his determination stronger than the pain. At one point, a shadow passed above. A bird swooped low, its beak glinting in the dim light. Hector froze, pressing himself flat against the fence, his body trembling. The bird circled once, then soared away, leaving only the echo of its cry. Hector's heart raced, but he did not retreat. He continued upward, inch by inch, until at last he reached the top. And there, he stopped. For the first time, Hector looked beyond the fence. His breath caught. The world spread out before him in endless waves of green and gold. Meadows rolled like oceans, dotted with wildflowers that swayed in the breeze. Far in the distance, trees stretched toward the heavens, their crowns glittering with the light of dawn. A river shimmered like silver, winding gracefully across the land. The garden, which once felt so vast, now seemed like a single drop in an endless sea. Hector wept, not from sadness, but from awe. "This is it," he whispered. "This is what I was meant to see." The wind swirled around him, carrying voices that felt both strange and familiar. "Welcome, Hector," it said. "Your journey begins now." And with that, Hector slid down the other side of the fence, leaving the garden behind forever. That night, when the moon rose high above the fields, Mira looked toward the fence. Something in her heart told her Hector was gone. She felt both fear and pride, sorrow and admiration. "Be safe," she whispered into the night. "May your dream carry you farther than any of us ever dared." The garden fell silent again. But beyond its walls, a small snail named Hector had taken his first steps into a world far greater than his shell could ever contain. The moment Hector slid down the far side of the fence, the earth felt different beneath him. It was wilder, rougher, and carried scents he had never known before, sharp, sweet, and sometimes bitter all at once. Every breath was filled with discovery. The grass here was not like the gentle blades of the garden, these stalks were thicker, taller, and towered over him like living walls. Hector felt as though he had stepped into a forest meant for giants. The meadow stretched out endlessly, a vast green ocean where the wind bent the stalks like waves. Hector moved carefully, feeling both exhilarated and terrified. For the first time, he was not enclosed by wooden walls or familiar borders, he was surrounded by infinity. At first, he admired everything. The way the dewdrops sparkled like tiny jewels on the grass. The wildflowers that tilted their bright faces toward the morning sun. The distant buzz of unseen insects, carried through the air like music. But as he ventured deeper, the meadow revealed its other side. The soil was cracked in places, with gaps too wide for his small body. Ant colonies here were larger, fiercer than those in the garden. Twice he had to flatten himself against the earth as columns of soldier ants marched by, carrying fragments of insects far larger than themselves. Everywhere Hector looked, life moved faster, stronger, hungrier. The butterflies in this meadow had wings so vast that when they fluttered above him, they cast shadows that blotted out the light. "This world is alive," Hector whispered. "Alive in ways I could never have imagined." By midday, the sun burned high overhead. For a snail, this was dangerous. Hector's skin dried quickly under its heat, and the soil grew hot against his body. He searched desperately for shade, finally finding refuge beneath a broad mushroom whose cap stretched wide like an umbrella. Here he rested, his body cooling in the damp earth. But the silence was short-lived. A shadow fell across him. Looking up, Hector saw legs, long, thin, and trembling as they moved. A grasshopper, taller than any creature he had ever seen, loomed above him. Its green body glistened in the sunlight, its legs coiled like springs ready to launch. Hector froze. The grasshopper tilted its head, examining him with curious eyes. For a moment, Hector feared it would crush him without thought. But then, with a sudden bound, it leapt away, soaring through the meadow like a falling star. The ground shook where it landed far in the distance. Hector let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. "So this is why they called it dangerous," he murmured. That evening, as the sky painted itself in streaks of orange and violet, Hector came across something that stole his breath again, not from fear, but from wonder. A dandelion. Not like the small, frail ones in the garden. This one was colossal, its golden head glowing in the light of the setting sun. Its stem rose above him like the trunk of a tree, and each petal seemed wide enough to serve as a bed. Hector climbed slowly, pulling his body upward until he reached one of the broad leaves. From there, he looked out across the meadow. The world stretched endlessly, painted in fire and gold. Shadows grew long across the grass, and in the distance, he thought he saw the shimmer of water, perhaps a river. His heart leapt. He wanted to go there, to see its silver skin glisten under the moon. But as night fell, the meadow changed once more. The warm hum of insects gave way to a chorus of chirps, croaks, and rustles. The air grew colder, the wind sharper. And then, from the darkness, came the low hoot of an owl. Hector shivered. From his perch on the dandelion, he saw its shadow sweep across the meadow. Wide wings stretched silently, gliding with predatory grace. Its eyes glowed faintly in the dusk, scanning, searching. Hector pressed himself low against the leaf, praying the owl would not see him. His small body trembled as the creature circled once, twice, before drifting away into the darkness. The meadow fell silent again, but Hector could not shake the fear from his heart. "This world is beautiful," he whispered to himself. "But it is also full of teeth and wings." That night, Hector did not sleep much. He curled under the broad leaf of the dandelion, listening to the sounds of the meadow. Every rustle of grass, every chirp, every wing beat reminded him that he was fragile, that he could be ended in an instant. Yet, in the midst of that fear, he felt something else. A strange kind of pride. He had faced the meadow of giants and survived his first day. He had seen its beauty, felt its danger, and still, he was here. As the stars shimmered above, Hector whispered into the night. I may be small, but I will not give up. I will see what lies beyond this meadow. I will find the river, the forests, the places the wind showed me. My story is only beginning. And with that promise, he drifted into uneasy sleep, dreaming of rivers that glowed like silver threads and skies filled with endless stars.